remind you that the views expressed in today's show do not reflect the views of KZLX, KNWT, or Northwest Missouri State University. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Weekend Sports Kickoff. I'm Anthony Madrigal. Today I'm joined by Andrew Wegley and John Walker, and we're going to be discussing the men's basketball team winning the Division II National Championship last week in Evansville. You guys were both there covering for the Missourian. Just tell me a little bit about what happened, what you saw, and your experiences of the game.
Right, yeah. So we got there, I think. We got there Wednesday for the Elite Eight game, which was against Mercyhurst from Pennsylvania. And Northwest going to that game, I think everybody kind of thought, they're going to go and smoke Mercyhurst just because they played such tough opponents in the central region here. In Maryville, they played Southern Nazarene, who was a top 15 team, and they played Missouri Southern, who's another top 20, top 15 team, depending on who you ask, I guess. But Mercyhurst ended up being a tough game. I think it ended 55-51 or something like that, or 54-51.
64, you're right, 55-51.
55-51, and Mercyhurst is actually ranked the number 2 defensive team in the country, and they had to play in that game without Diego Bernard, who was out with a lower leg injury that he suffered in the central region. He had missed a whole week of practice, so they held him out. And then they had Joey Withis suffer an injury in the second half, and he missed most of the last 13 or 16 minutes. He had checked back in a couple times, but he only played a few possessions. So they battled through that one, and obviously came away victorious. But the locker room after that one, I mean, it was a somber scene. Me and John went in there, and you can tell more about that. But it just wasn't a vibe that I was like, okay, these guys are going to win a championship. It was a vibe that was like, how's Joey Withis doing? How's Diego Bernard doing? Are they going to be able to field a whole team the next day in the Final Four? But they did.
And coming out of this, was this like, after seeing that kind of mood in the locker room, was this something that made you really worry, like, about the team going into the next game?
I talked to Andrew about this. I was, in all honesty, pretty nervous. Especially after Withis went down. There was no formal release on the extent of his injury or anything. So we didn't really know what his status was going to be going into the Thursday game, the Final Four game. Like Wegley touched on a little bit, the locker room was very somber. It wasn't, we just won an Elite Eight game, which that's not really how Coach Mack teaches this team to behave anyways, just because they're always looking to the next game. And they really felt like throughout the course of the season they didn't accomplish anything until they had won the national championship, as crazy as that sounds with everything that they did accomplish. But yeah. I think personally I started to worry a little bit. I didn't doubt them or anything, but there were a couple of thoughts in the back of my mind that were like, oh, what now?
And with that press conference right after that Elite Eight game, McCollum came in his opening statement. His voice was kind of shaky. He kind of said because on the brink of tears, talking about how proud he was of them fighting through that win. And I was kind of like, this is not a great. I mean, your coach is almost crying in the post game presser. Your best player, your MVP, misses most of the second half, and he didn't look great. He just looked a little stressed out in the locker room. We didn't get to talk to him, and the locker room was just silent. But they came out in the Final Four, the Elite Eight semifinal, I guess is what Division II calls it. And they took care of business against St. Anselm, and we discussed how to pronounce that name probably for 3 hours on Thursday, just trying to figure out St. Anselm, I think is what we, or Anselm. St. Anselm, they came out and they got a pretty convincing victory. Diego played. He didn't start, but he did play, or maybe did he start? I don't know.
He did start.
I think he did start, but he was checked out quick. Joey Withis came off of the bench. No, Joey Withis did start. Joey Withis started. But, yeah, regardless, they both played quite a bit of minutes, and they played a less close game. I actually cannot remember the score of that one. I have it here in front of me, actually.
76.
Yeah, 76-53. So their most convincing game, I think, of the tournament. And they were in a much better mood after that game. They were happy. They were ready to talk to the media. They were joyful, and they had a day off to watch film on Point Loma, who had Dalton Hamas, who is the NABC Division II Player of the Year. So they kind of took it away after that, and then they had a whole game, and we got to talk to them again on Friday going into that game. But yeah, they were happier, and it kind of felt like, okay, we got 30. Yeah, we got 37 wins. We need one more, and they went out and got it.
Which the rhythm was thrown off a little bit, because if you look at the first half of that ball game, they went into halftime with a 2-point lead, 31-29 over the Hawks from St. whatever, Anselm. And it really felt like it was going to be a continuously close game throughout the second half, and they were able to pull away. So not too shabby from them. Like you said, when we talked to them on Friday, Dalton Thomas was going to give them a little bit of matchup problems. Ryan Hawkins actually let all of us know, we talked about it with him. Are you excited to play the D2 National Player of the Year? How does this feel for you? And he said, well, if anything, he should be excited to play us. So that kind of set the precedent of the mindset that Northwest was taking on the approach to playing Point Loma.
I think if I was worried about anything going into that championship game, at least from a Northwest perspective, it's just how tired they seemed. We talked to them in the hotel lobby at the DoubleTree on Friday. We got some media availability, so shout out to the athletics department for letting that happen. And I mean, McCollum was like over on the couch in the corner waiting for us, and he let his eyes rest for a little bit. Ryan Welty had his leg wrapped up, and Joey had been hurt and Diego was hurt, and they all seemed kind of exhausted. And I was just like, after 37 victories, it's been a long season, and they just kind of had to power through. And obviously they did that against Point Loma on Saturday, and as everyone should know by now, unless they're living under a rock, won the national championship for the second time in 3 years. So it was pretty fun to watch, and ultimately all the worries that we had were a moot point, but they won by 6, and it's a good game, I think.
Now, I missed the first half personally, but I got to see the second half of the national championship game, and it just seemed like I was surprised with the score when I first saw it because I expected Northwest, we've been playing tough games throughout the whole tournament, but I expected definitely a little bit better showing. But John informed me that it was a struggle for the first half. So what was the real difference that you guys saw between the first half from Northwest and the second half coming out?
When it was really that they started to play team defense. I talked about that with all of the amazing Twitter presence that I had over the week in Evansville. One of the keys that I said to the game was that Northwest had to play team defense because you had 3 or 4 guys that could really all 5 in the lineup of Point Loma. I mean, they're runner-up, national champion runner-ups. All of those guys could get hot at any time, and Mac touched on it in his press conference after the game that they could not – their defensive scheming was that they could not let Point Loma play off of each other and make each other better. So the thing that really kind of decided it and was a key factor in the second half is that they started to play better team defense opposed to man-to-man, better.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. They just buckled down defensively. And they played defensively great the whole game. They allowed 29 points in the first half, 29 points in the second half. But this is a team that's averaged 40 points a half in this season. They're averaging 80.1 points per game this season. To hold them to 58 points is pretty incredible. Another thing, they held them to 1 of 10 from 3 in the second half, and I think that one was probably Dalton Thomas. I remember him having a pretty big 3, but I think he even shot from 3. It was only 2 for 8 on the game. So holding him, they held him to 27 points. So he still dropped a good amount of points, but they didn't let him make his teammates better, is what McCollum was kind of saying in the post-game presser, that if they kind of made them all play isolation, they couldn't let them make each other better, and that's how they got the win. And Northwest also just hit shots when they needed to. Mm-hmm. Joey Withis probably had the highlight play. It was on CBS Sports Twitter. He hit the off-balance dagger 3 with about 7 minutes left in the game. I don't know if you can call it a dagger, but it put him up 10 points, and it was a ridiculous shot. It was from past Curry range.
It was
I think
43 feet.
Yeah, it was in the bank too.
Bank was open in Evansville, and it was just. I think after that shot, I think there was a timeout right after that, and Withis said that when they went into the timeout, they kind of all believed we're 7 minutes away from a national title. We just have to buckle down. We have to get through this, and the momentum there. It was all Northwest, and Point Loma. They tried to battle back, but the 10-point deficit, I think that was probably the largest lead of the game. Northwest's largest lead was 11 points, so it was right after that. They got their largest lead of the game, which is pretty insane to think about.
Yeah, and that seemed to be because watching the game, that seemed to be the turning point of the second half. And it was really even when they had to go and when they played, I think it was Southeastern Oklahoma was the game they won to go to the Elite Eight. And there was, because I was working the game and John was right next to me, when it got a little sketchy there and Trevor hit that shot, and it just seems like Northwest was the team all year that when they needed a shot to go down, we had it, and it was just coming out of anywhere. But, 38-0, we are fifth team to go undefeated and win a national championship in D2 history. Obviously, it's a really impressive accomplishment. I mean, we have, I believe, one senior on the team.
Yeah, two seniors. Dre Starzl, who's logged 498 minutes in his career. I think we looked up last night in the hotel, or maybe 2 days ago.
Is it McDonald's?
In the McDonald's. I don't know. we've had a long week together with Tucker Franklin of the Missouri and Joe Andrews as well. We spent a lot of time together, but yeah, it was just. I mean, Dre's not a huge difference maker. Not to say that he's not a difference maker elsewhere, not on the court. I mean, he's probably a good locker room guy. He's got to be a good teammate to have stayed around this long. But him and obviously Joe, each will lose a National Player of the Year. They're still in a better spot than they were a year ago. Yeah. I mean, when they graduated, Justin Pitts, Xavier Kurth, Brett Doherty, and Chrissy Bowendow, and everybody kind of thought, they're left for dead, or maybe not left for dead, but they're definitely going to go through a building year. And I mean, pretty good building year to go 38-0. So I think they're in a good spot going forward. Those two freshman guards, and then coupled with Ryan Hawkins, a sophomore. They got Luke Waters, who redshirted this year. He's supposed to be pretty good.
Welty in his senior year.
Yeah, Welty will be in his senior year, and Xavier Rhodes, who didn't redshirt, but he didn't play a ton. He didn't log a single minute. And then Kirk Finlay too came in and played some significant minutes in the national championship game. He'll be a senior. So next year they're going to be good, and then they'll get another recruiting class. The question could be is Ben McCollum going to be around? I think that's what a lot of people talk about. There's not a lot of basis there in substance. It's all kind of speculation, but we could certainly talk about that if you guys want. I just work here, so.
I mean, I don't know if they're going to come at me for anything. I work graphics on the show, so I'll go ahead and hit that one. I think maybe 2 years is a good timetable for him to, especially depending on how he does next year. I think 2 years would be a very interesting timetable to see when he moves on. I just really think a Division I program, either a low Power 5 or a good mid-major, is going to throw him an offer he can't refuse. And, I mean, you've done all you can at this point for a Division II.
Exactly. Like you said, what more would you want to do? You could want to win 10 national championships at the Division II in a row. But at what point does that get old for you? What point do you want something more for yourself? That's not a bad thing if you want to settle, if not settle, but if you would want to have that goal. But like you said, I feel like at some point in time in the next few years, either a low Power 5 or a mid-major comes to Coach Mack and throws him an offer he can't refuse. And if that's the case, it would be silly to pass it up.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. I mean, I know he's got kids that are both in school age kids. So if he wants to stay in Maryville to raise them, that's certainly we essentially it's all speculation.
Exactly,
is what we're doing, because we have no idea what his goals are, what his aspirations, and what he's content with or not content with. I think it could be a situation where a Power 5 school, if he especially, I mean, if you look at in 2014 they lost in the quarterfinals or something like that, but their best player, Dylan Starzl, at the time, Dre Starzl's older brother, had gone down injured, and they lost to the eventual national champions in UCM, which propelled Kim Anderson to the Mizzou job, and he's now at Pitt State, I think. And yeah, he is. But they could have won a national championship last year. They're a caliber team then. And then 2017, they win one. Last year, if Justin Pitts isn't hurt in the regional, they could very well, get close to a national championship, if not win one. And then this year, completely different roster, and they win one. And I'm sure next year, if McCollum's around, or even if he isn't, they'll be knocking on the door of another one, barring disaster. So I think if you're a Division I school right now and you're looking for a head coach, it'd be stupid to not at least consider that, the guy that's been a coach of the year in the MIAA 5 times now. He's won National Coach of the Year like 3 times, and I'm sure he'll win that again this year. It'd be insane to think that the guy is 38-0 isn't going to win it, especially when he had two freshman guards all year. But it's all we could do is speculate, I suppose. But I would say that I think he could leave this offseason, honestly, and we'll see. Obviously, again, speculating like you guys are, 2 years wouldn't shock me. Next year wouldn't shock me. Right now wouldn't shock me. But it also wouldn't shock me if he's still around 10 years from now, because it's all speculation, and it's all depends on, what's going to drive him, what's going to, make him happy, and what's better for him and his family. So.
Yeah, and we had the chance to talk to Mac a lot throughout the course of the season, obviously. And one of the things that he really let us have insight on was that when he was in college, he sat down, made a list with his wife of goals that he had in life. And by 27, he either wanted to be an assistant Division I coach or a head coach at the Division II level. Somebody asked him if he had any other goals or intentions on that list, and he said no at that time. So even if he didn't tell us at that time, so you never really know. But he for sure accomplished and did a pretty darn good job at the goal that he had when he was 27, and that's becoming a head Division II coach. So
yeah, he's 37 years old now too. I mean, that list he probably made when he was 21, 22, 23.
It's changed a little
so
bit.
It's 15 years old, 13 years old now, whatever it may be. So, it's all speculative. It's all up in the air, and it's all depending on what he wants to do. But he'll coach here, or they'll have him coach here as long as he wants. I'm sure, just based off the pedigree and the fact that he's now brought the team 2 national titles in the last 3 years.
Yeah, and coming off that, John, you've had it's probably more of a simmering take at this point. It was a hot take at the time that, Northwest, with our ability to be at such a high level athletically, the changing of the guard from a football to a basketball school, I think it's time to actually acknowledge it, because it's happening. Football's kind of it's there, but it's not at the same level basketball is.
Me and Wegley actually talked about this, and it's crazy to think that, Northwest has been so tenured and so good in football that last year was technically a down year for them. And he said that in some cases, that would have been some schools' best season in a decade.
Mm-hmm.
So it's crazy to think that, but I think it's on the cusp. I don't know if it's there yet. I think it's still a hot take. It's simmering. But I think it's on the cusp.
Maybe it's just like Auburn,
It
or
reminds
Auburn.
me a lot of Ohio State, like the early 2000s Ohio State.
Where you can be good at both of them.
Yeah, you're really just
Auburn right now.
Yeah.
Football,
LSU.
Their bread and butter is football, but I think Auburn made it to the Sweet 16 around 32 this year.
They're in the Final Four.
Man.
Oh, Final Four? Yeah,
they beat Kentucky earlier.
Yeah, that tells you how much attention I've been paying to the bracket this year. I actually didn't even fill one out, but that's what it is. Auburn's still considered, I'd say, a football school. They're down there in the Bible Belt, the football capital of the world, and but here they are. Their basketball team's doing pretty well. I really like your take. I'm just a basketball-oriented person, at least compared to football. I just think it's more fun to watch. So I like them both a lot, but I think in terms of Northwest, the way the football team plays, I don't necessarily always like that style of play, so I don't always, it's not as captivating to me. But basketball is awesome here. And, if they keep winning national championships and football keeps not winning national championships, then it's going to have to be a conversation at some point. I think people like us would probably consider crazy right now if we said outright it's a basketball school. But
I think when you look at it, if you look at it from our standpoint, we take pretty much everything into consideration for the most part. I played football since I could walk until the end of high school, and obviously I'm the one making this take right now. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if for me it's necessarily a bias towards one sport, but look at it from a media standpoint. It's a lot easier to become accustomed to 11 guys, know them, be able to know their tendencies, opposed to however many 60 for 50 plus that are on the football roster.
It's 56 is the active roster.
So I don't know.
Insight.
I
a little bit of insight.
Well, Max Moore from KNWT kind of had a similar point to that. He's like, I was like, the 60th best player in the football team, but I was recognized as a football player and still is recognized as a football player. But if you look at the 11th, 10th, 11th best guys on this current basketball team, if you walk around campus, how many people are going to say, "Oh, that's Derek Lang"? Nobody knows who Derek Lang is. Oh, that's Luke Waters. Nobody knows who Luke Waters is necessarily, unless they pay. Or right now, sure, but even Dre Stars, people are like, that guy looks familiar. They don't necessarily know unless they're like us or if they're pretty big fans who Dre Stars is. But when you see a player as a football player, a lot of times you're like, oh, that's that's Troy Harper. Or that's somebody even less noticeable than LaTroy. I'm not personally like that because I didn't cover the football beat all year, so I know the basketball team like the back of my hand, and I know football like the front of it, I guess. So
a little bit of that could be too is football players look like football players.
That's true. They're all big.
Trevor Hudgens, if he's walking down the street, you're not going to be like, there's a Division II.
There's the most outstanding player in the Division II tournament.
Yeah, you're not going to be like off the cuff. That's who he is. But another thing I found interesting, at least that I didn't know until today, is Diego and his sister are each the point guard of they both Division II. Both of their teams were number 1 in the nation, which is very interesting. I didn't know that.
They were both undefeated for a while until Drury lost, I think, in the Elite Eight or the Final Four or something like that.
I think it was the Final Four.
Yeah, so they had a chance to both be national champions this week. Unfortunately for them, Drury lost. But, yeah, St. Joe's finest, that family is tight-knit, and they had some emotional moments after the national championship game. It was something to watch. There were some tears. It was probably the most emotional thing that I think I saw transpire on that court.
I saw a pretty warm embrace between Austin Meyer and Ben McCollum.
Oh, I missed that.
I got that. I saw that, but I think aside from
Diego and his dad, man, that was something.
Yeah, I think aside from that, even with seeing that, by far the most emotional thing on the court post game yesterday was Diego and his dad.
You love to see it.
Love to see it.
And he said after the game, he said all the money my family puts into traveling, because if you guys go to their games, I mean Chris Bernard, his dad, and his mom, I forgot her name, but they are at every single game. Yeah. Pretty much every single game and they do that for Drury too. And he said all the money they put into everything they put into traveling, this is what it was for. We're national champions, so you love to see that.
And now, especially you guys having a whole year, we'll just get close. One last question. A whole year of seeing Diego Bernard, where do you project him eventually finishing his Northwest career?
Sheesh.
Just real quick.
2-time national champion, top 10 scoring. Yeah, actually, top 5 scoring.
I'm gonna go top 5 scoring. I'm gonna say Bevo Francis Award finalist. 2-time MIAA Player of the Year, and 2-time national champion.
Well, whatever the case, he obviously has a bright future, very good and shining present right now, and I think that's going to just about do it for this week. Thank you for joining us this week for the Weekend Sports Kickoff.